Well, let me cut across to our first big newsmaker tonight, Mr. Anand Grover, who's a senior advocate, a lawyer for the petitioners. He's also somebody who has vociferously advocated the cause of the LGBTQ community, not just in this case, but in multiple other forums and cases that we have seen earlier. Mr. Grover, it's a pleasure to have you with us on the broadcast. We're also joined by Rahul Ishwar and Prateek Som. But Anand, first to you, are you disappointed after today's judgment? My first question to you.
Well, I'm disappointed, but not disheartened. This is one of the setbacks. We've had setbacks before. I wish that we were able to advance arguments on the fundamental issue of what the court has said, that there's no right to marry. I respectfully disagree. There is a right to marry. Just take an example. Let me put the devil in this debate. Suppose tomorrow Parliament were to say nobody can get married.
Yeah.
They pass it. What would the court do? They will have to say there's a fundamental right to get married, and they'll have to strike it down. So to say there's no fundamental right to marry, in my respectful submission, is totally incorrect. Secondly, though the verdict has not been what we wanted, there are a lot of things in it which are very positive. Justice Chandrachud's judgment has actually very clearly stated that the unions, not civil union, that has to be decided by the committee, but unions of non-heterosexual persons will be protected. There will be sensitization, etc., which are very positive steps.
Sure.
And the majority has not disagreed. So I think it is now firmly established that relationships of the non-heterosexual variety are with us, and the battle for marriage is actually going to be won in the ultimate. Just one thing, why are we saying that there is no equality and discrimination? What is the difference between a homosexual or a non-heterosexual marriage and a heterosexual marriage?
Right.
There's no real difference. The sexual acts are the same. It's only that the people belong to different sexual orientation.
Absolutely.
But to tell them, you can do everything. You can have sex of the type anybody else can have, but we won't allow you to marry.
Yeah.
Now, we don't allow a person to marry. On the face of it, it is discriminatory. And I wish the court had seen it like that. And in fact, the US judgment on this issue squarely covers us. But we were not able to persuade the court this time.
Anand,
Like we lost in Kaushal,
Yeah.
ultimately we won in Navtej. So we are going to win.
I was coming to that you have seen a lot of twists and turns as far as this particular cause for the LGBTQ community is concerned, from being called the unconvicted felons by none other than the Supreme Court, to that particular judgment being overturned in a curative petition. There have been historical dramatic developments as far as the apex court of the country is concerned. But when the bench unanimously agrees that marriage is not a fundamental right, why do you still hold on to that hope? The Chief Justice of India, though in a minority opinion on certain positions like recognition of civil partnerships and the right to adopt for the same-sex couples, but do you think that minority judgment is the way forward?
Well, unfortunately, Anusha, the minority judgment also says there is no right to marry.
Yes.
And that is unfortunate because a very liberal and a brilliant judge like Justice Chandrachud has said that. I'm very unhappy about that. But we will persuade future judges or parliamentarians. We are not going to give up on either. I think we can convince parliamentarians also. Sometimes when we were fighting the Nas Foundation case of the Navtej Johar, we were also tweaking with parliamentarians. So we are not going to give up any avenue because justice is on our side. And if justice is on our side, we shall win ultimately.
Another point that has been discussed a lot in the newsroom, in the people that I've spoken to through the day, is that on many occasions the Supreme Court has decided to overstep, quote unquote, and take the call and do the right thing in the interest of justice. That's what Article 32 and the petitions are really about, which are filed under that provision of the Constitution, that the court can do anything in the interest of justice. And many times the Supreme Court has been criticized from certain quarters that, look, you're overstepping. This is not the domain of the judiciary. It's the domain of the legislature. Why do you think in this particular case the court did not bite the bullet? Is it because we have a very complicated sphere of personal laws in India and they are not rationalized under a common civil code? Or perhaps it was a fear or the mammoth task that needs to be undertaken if same-sex marriages are to be recognized? The government argued that about 100 laws will have to change in the country.
Well, just to actually confer the right to marry, you don't have to change laws. If you have to go further in terms of inheritance, guardianship, etc., then you have to change laws. So we restricted our attack only on the inequality and discriminatory aspect of non-heterosexual couples not being able to marry. But I don't know why, but I think uh, there was a strong pushback by the government. And I don't know what influenced the judges to take the decision they have, but I think it's wrong. It's very difficult to fathom the minds of judges. Their opinion is only in the judgment. We have to only take a cue from that. And I think there is an error in the judgment which has to be corrected.
Final question to you, Anand. Legally speaking, with the bench unanimously agreeing, and as you pointed out, even the Chief Justice of India said that there is no fundamental right to marry in this country. With that being said by 5 judges on a constitution bench, legally, is there still scope for any kind of revision?
Well, it is very well said. The Supreme Court is not right because it's right. It is right only because it's the Supreme Court. So judges can actually take a 180 degrees turn depending on how they perceive it. And that's the essence of democracy.
Right.
And I think in future we will be able to persuade judges.
Anand, good luck for your cause and the kind of battles that you've been fighting
Thank
at the
you very
Supreme
much.
Court. And thank you so much for
Pleasure
your
to be here.
time. I want to